How many of you would say that compared with 3 years ago, my customers are getting easier to deal with? No one. And so let me flip it. How many would say customers are distinctly tougher today than they were? So everyone will agree to this. Here's, to me, the interesting thing. Is this just the GFC? No. That phenomenon was detectable starting 4 or 5 years back. It's accelerated a bit, perhaps because of hard times, but something was happening. So customers have become distinctly tougher. How many of us would say, my customers today are tending to treat me more as a commodity than they used to? The clear majority of us, maybe 3/4 of us. How many of us would say, my customers today demand more expertise, more depth, and more support than ever they did before? Just about everyone. Think. Wait a minute. Why would the same hands go up for both? If your customers are treating you more as a commodity, why do they need more support and more expertise? If customers need support and expertise and help, then why would they be treating you as a commodity? Yet both those things are true. And this is why we know that something significant is happening in selling. And it's not just here, it's a global phenomenon. I can say before we even talk, customers are getting tougher, they're likely to be treating you more as a commodity, but at the same time, they're asking for more expertise and support than they did. And that sort of doesn't make sense. So I want to look at why that's happening, because something really curious is going on here. Another thing I should talk about is that we're in an era of the rise of purchasing. Purchasing is getting into the kind of sale they never got into in the past, and they're having more and more power. And a lot of us in selling don't see what a revolution has taken place in purchasing. It used to be, without being unkind about it, that the sort of person who went into purchasing was not someone who would be a superstar rising up through the organization. They'd just be honest folks who weren't going to cut it in HR, and so we put them into purchasing where they can't do a lot of damage, and vendors will take them out to lunch sometimes as a sort of reward. Well, I parody that, of course, but that's not the new purchasing. It's very, very common in the States for major purchasing jobs to have a base salary in excess of $1 million and be paid a percentage of the savings they make on top of that. Because purchasing is the only function in an organization where 100% of the savings comes to us. If we want to create savings in any other department, we usually have to invest in order to create them. If we want better manufacturing, we have to bring in new machines. And that's a cost before we get the saving. But in purchasing, we take it from our vendors. And that's why purchasing has been under the spotlight. And what's happened is there's been a revolution in purchasing. It's not just that it's tougher and more predatory, it's that it's more strategic than ever before. And it's altered the way this works. Let me give you an example of purchasing strategy. This is a segmentation strategy. This particular model is one that was first developed in McKinsey, but almost every major consultancy has over the past 10 years sold a lot of stuff that looks broadly like this. Here we're looking at how important a product or service is and how difficult it is to substitute. In other words, if it's up at high, it's at the 10 end, and low is down at the 1. Now, that is a sign of some major change. Always in sales, we have put our customers into boxes, into segments. We treat a major account very differently from the way we treat a mom and pop account. So we're used in selling to putting customers into boxes and treating each box differently. Well, this is exactly what's happened in purchasing. In this box here, if it's fairly easy to obtain, and it's not that strategically important. They're in the box called shop. You might think that is just a polite way of saying screw, but it's a bit more than that. In this box, what happens is you don't even meet with salespeople. You go to them when you want something. Go to their website and buy. And a good example of this box is also one of the most important moments in the history of buying and selling. Someone's going to write a whole chapter on this. And it's a turning point in the history of sales. A few years ago, Walmart, as the world's biggest retailer, in their headquarters at Bentonville, Arkansas, had a purchasing apparatus that involved 3,800 people. It was costing them, they never will reveal these figures, but the estimate is it was costing them somewhere around $1 billion a year to run just their purchasing department. They did an analysis and found two interesting things. One was the average purchasing agent could see 6.8 salespeople a day. Second thing they found was 75% of the cost of running this great big purchasing department, 75% of the cost was being used to acquire products that contributed less than 5% of the profit. Now that's significant. So they're spending all this money for things that scarcely contribute at all to Walmart's profit. In fact, there were cases where it was costing them more to buy it than the profit they made on it. So they said, we've got to do something about this. How far can we push up the productivity of our purchasing people? Well, we can't. 6.8 salespeople a day is a lot of meetings. Very few companies have ever been that productive. So what can you do? Well, one purchasing agent can visit 80 websites a day and place orders. So why would you pay to have a talking brochure come and sit in front of you to tell you about their mousetrap, when you can much more easily go to the website, find what you need, place an order if you want to? So what they said was, let's change our whole purchasing strategy. Let's cut this 3,800 people down to about 2,000. We don't need a lot of people who we're paying to listening to talking brochures telling us about mousetraps. It doesn't do anything for us. And it's costing us a hell of a lot. They slimmed their organization down almost in half. They wrote to the majority of vendors and they said, don't come and knock on the door, there's no one behind it. We'll still do business with you, but we'll come to you. We'll come to your website and we'll place orders. And that's how we'll do business. Oh, by the way, now we have saved you the cost of sending us a salesperson, we want a bigger discount. That's Walmart. Interestingly, in Fortune 500 companies, those that implemented this type of purchasing strategy, this segmentation, made an 11% saving for the same bundle of goods and services over a 3-year period. And we've just seen one of the reasons. But what happens if you're strategically more important? The strategy here is called leverage. Basically, let's assume that we have offices in, should we say, 25 locations. And at the moment, each office goes out and buys its office supplies and office equipment. Well, what we say is, we depend on that office equipment. It's important to us. It's fairly strategically important. But why don't we leverage our purchasing by centralizing? Let's call in 3 vendors. And we'll say to them, we are going to offer one of you a 5-year contract to supply all 20 offices. This is going to be 100 times bigger than the average purchase we make. Would you like it? You'd like it? Good. Let's talk price. Oh, and our, by the way, is this. If you don't get this business, don't send us a salesperson for 5 years, because we'll be working with your competitor. And unless they really screw up, perhaps you should never send us a salesperson again. Think of this as you prepare your bid.